Hello, I'm Toby Nelson, Certified Professional Horticulturist, coming to you from Venture Out Nursery on Whidbey Island. Today we're going to talk a little bit about how to have a more climate resilient garden. This could be a huge topic that we could spend lots of time on, but we're going to try to just stick to the highlights. So climate change is bringing us all sorts of extreme weather, whether it is heat, drought, or intense rain. There are things we can do to help our gardens be ready for that. One of the most important things we can do is to build a healthy soil. And so what this can look like is leaving your organic matter on your soil. So when plants drop their foliage in the fall, let it stay there. If you have perennials or grasses that die back, that you cut back, let that debris stay there. Practice chop and drop. So I use a pair of head shears and I chop everything down in little increments, and then I just spread the litter out. Another benefit, climate aside, from doing that is that then leaves habitat for beneficial insects to overwinter. Soil is like a stomach, so we need to constantly feed it so that it remains healthy and dynamic. Just like when we don't eat, we get tired and flaccid and we stop working, and soil is the same way. So leaving debris on the soil is one of the best things we can do. Having roots growing in soil is another really important way to build a healthy soil. So make sure you have plants that occupy every layer of the garden, including the ground covers and the low perennials. Annuals even are helpful. So having plants on the soil, having leaf cover on the soil helps keep the moisture in. So as the fall hydrates our soils and then they begin to dry out through spring and summer, having foliage close to that ground level helps keep the humidity and the moisture close to the soil, and it promotes longevity of moisture in soil. And then mulching and using composts are other ways of building healthy soils. So having a constant organic matter input, whether it's from cover crop, fallen debris, or mulches, is really important for building healthy soil. Another benefit of healthy soil is that it becomes more porous over time, and this is very important when we have heavy precipitation events. So when we get extreme rainfalls or extreme snows, and then all of a sudden we have this water coming like crazy, having soils with good porosity are able to accept that rainfall water or whatever form of water that is coming. Something else you can do if you're open to building or adapting your garden would be to create swales, which is like contouring the land to promote the runoff going where you want it to go. And then perhaps that water is guided to a rain garden. You can also use pipes from your gutters and guide that water from your roof into a rain garden or an area that's designed to accept intense, sudden amounts of rainfall. So that's a little more buildy maybe than just maintenance-y, but that's something to think about. And we will aim to do a separate rain garden video so that we can talk more about that in depth. Another thing you can do to help your garden is to choose climate adapted plants. So our video right now is taking place in our native section, and we're quite proud of the vast amount of natives that we offer here at Venture Out. We do believe that native plants are some of the best you can include in your garden to have a climate adapted garden. They're designed to grow in our soils and with the weather cycles we have. Even with the oncoming challenges, it's important to include natives in your garden, whether that's the sort of more commonly considered sort of foresty natives like salal and huckleberry and vine maples and big leaf maples, or more of sort of the meadow species that might include some of the native perennials like woolly sunflower or the showy fleabane, some of our native grasses like Deschampsia and Romer's fescue, camas. Including natives in your garden help both you don't need to give them a lot of extra input. So they don't need extra water, and they are just more adapted to our soil, so they don't need as much input. But also they're the best at providing habitat for our native insects and birds. And with climate change, there's more stress on ecosystems, and so we really need to give that support to our critters and creatures, which again could be a whole other video. So natives are great, but there are other climate adapted plants we can pick for our garden. So things that tolerate drought and are appropriate to what you have. So whether they tolerate dry shade or dry sun, or maybe you have an area where all that waterfall comes and you need to have plants that tolerate very wet winters. Choosing plants like that are very important. So things like western red cedar and some of the willows and the populus or poplars, those are plants that tolerate those wet winter spells that we have. Things like juniper, ocean spray, nootka rose, those are plants that will tolerate the summer heat. Ceanothus is an imported plant that we can use. So that's another way to build a climate resilient garden. If you must water, then using trickle irrigation is important. So a really slow flow of water right on the root zone of the plant, long and slow, so the soil can hold that moisture, accept it slowly, and then it will balloon out underneath and store it. So long, infrequent, but deep trickle waterings are the best way to water your garden for climate resilience. And then something that's not so pleasant to think about, but it's necessary depending on where you live, but that's fireproofing the garden. So again, it's a whole other huge topic, but a couple things to consider is as you have branches fall and lots of more woody debris, consider putting them in dedicated piles away from your house or structures so that you can provide habitat and let those things compost naturally in your yard and garden, but they aren't making a tinderbox close to your house. And I've also read that keeping a 5-foot perimeter around your home of non-flammables. So maybe you don't mulch with bark in that area, maybe you mulch with gravel in that area. You don't have branches touching your house. If you do choose to have plant material in that 5-foot buffer, that's good material to keep irrigated so it's not as dry and tindery. Maybe you don't have conifers there, which tend to have the pitch load of conifers tend to be quick igniting. So it's one of those things that you may want to consider. We've always been a moist climate, but times are changing. So I hope those tips help you create a climate adapted garden. Thanks for watching. Happy gardening.